Let's get it on. Happy Tuesday, everyone. I was just talking to Carson offline. He's talking about how long of a week it's been already after one day. So, things are kind of hectic in the NFL, but glad we are here to talk about our Week 9 matchup. I got Carson Fowler from the SKOL Purple Podcast. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
Of course, man. So we definitely have a big Week 9 matchup coming up. So we're gonna kind of touch base with you, man. Kind of see how things are going. 6-1 NFC North, feeling pretty good up there, man. So division leaders. This kind of what you expected to start off the year, or what do you think?
Well, I don't know if I would say it's something I expected for sure. I mean, I expected them to at least be competitive, and there was maybe going to be a chance that they could make a run at the postseason. Maybe not the division. Kind of thought Green Bay maybe would still be in first place, but it's kind of been a storybook season in a regard because the Packers have literally fallen apart, and the Vikings continue to win these close games and are 6-1. And it's been really fun to watch some of these games. A little stressful at times with some of these close games, but I'm sure you know how that's been throughout the years. But it's good to be 6-1. That is for sure.
Yeah, definitely, man. What's up? I want to shout out Hawk to the chat. Thank you for watching and giving us a shout out. Shout out to Purple Pocket Podcast. What's up to you, too, man? Hopefully you're enjoying the whole podcast right here.
My boy Rap.
There you go, Rap. I think we have another guest in the queue. Let me pull him up really quick. What's up, Tony? How you doing, bro?
Pretty good.
Cool. Welcome to the Full Press Commanders podcast, man. Hopefully things are well. So let me ask you guys a question before we dive into the state of the Vikings. So are you guys surprised with the Packers kind of falling off this year? Like that was surprising to me playing them a couple weeks ago.
Tony, I'll let you go.
On ahead. Okay, I have no problem talking.
You go
smack about sure. No, I mean I have been surprised. Probably, I mean I'm surprised with the love. I was thinking that they may issue once Devontae at that receiving group. So I before the season started was at the division. That was my prediction. He did think that the Packers were nipping at our heels at about 7 or so. So surprised that they are certainly with their account them out. So you got when you guys took them pretty happy as Vikings.
Yeah, so I got a little bit about that real quick. Hey, Tony, try to fix your mic, come right back on because it's kind of breaking up a little bit, but we'll get on there in a second. But yeah, like I think you said you're pretty happy and excited the Packers are losing. I can definitely see that perspective. Carson, what are you thinking about that? How do you feel about the Packers? How do you think things are going?
Well, it's always a good day in Minneapolis, Minnesota when the Packers are losing as well and the Vikings are winning, so you get the best of both worlds. Your vaunted division rival that seems to have your number most of the time is losing. You beat them in week 1, and Aaron Rodgers, seeing him upset and dismayed on the sideline is just one of the greatest things in the NFL, I have to say, from a Vikings fan, obviously. But
yeah,
I think a lot of people don't really like Aaron Rodgers anymore, which is fine that you're finally coming to the good side of that. But it's definitely good to see the Packers struggle and the Vikings winning at the same time. But I did think it was a little bit premature that I didn't think it was going to be this year. I thought maybe next year would maybe be more of a falling off year for the Packers. But I do think that I think with the lack of receivers, I knew that was going to be a problem. I just didn't think it was going to be this big of a problem so far this season.
I agree. I feel like obviously Devontae Adams, with his loss, maybe the Packers would, potentially take a step back. I do feel that the Packers GM may have been a little bit kind of conceited, maybe overly optimistic by just drafting rookie wide receivers and expecting Aaron Rodgers to pull them up. But you know what? I mean, I'm not mad at it. It kind of opens up a slot for the NFC, so I'm kind of happy that we got that win last week. So, it's not a Packers podcast, it's a Commanders podcast, it's a Vikings podcast. Let's kind of talk about this team coming up. So, what's the vibe over in Minnesota, man? So 6-1. I mean, I'd be feeling pretty good about that. Kevin O'Connell, we kind of have some connections with him. We'll bring him up in a second. But what are the vibes? You guys have some long-term perspective, like 6-1? Like, are you guys going to make some noise? Are you guys kind of feeling that like you guys are fortunate so far? Like, what's the vibes over in Minnesota right now?
Tony?
Is the mic a little bit better now?
I think so. We'll see.
Okay. So yeah, no, my perspective, excited about being 6-1. Although it is one of them been winning ugly. It has extremely confidence-inducing at times, especially with. I'm today with T.J. Hawkinson. I do this team is the opposing team by scoring enough points. I mean, I think that's going to be key for this team. Can we do plus scores that makes the other teams one-dimensional, which should kind of make up for some on our defense. So, this team this year, I'd be surprised to see us win. But boy, I don't feel like quite yet.
Gotcha. And Tony, your microphone is still kind of going in and out, so maybe try to problem solve that a little bit.
It might be his internet connection too.
Oh, it might be the internet connection. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
that's fine.
But
okay, yeah, we'll figure it out. But then so go ahead, Carson.
Go ahead,
Carson. What are you gonna say?
So yeah, I think we're all pretty happy with how things have gone. 6-1. Obviously, Philadelphia didn't go very well, but that's pretty much for everybody so far this season. So you can't be too upset with that. But if you want to see the Vikings go to really good team to a great team, obviously they want to be competitors with Philadelphia, and they're going to have to beat Philadelphia if they want to even have a shot at getting to the Super Bowl. But I think we're pretty happy with how things are. I think from some of our perspectives, it's just like we want to see this team go from really good to great. And I do think that they helped themselves out at the trade deadline today, which we'll probably talk about here pretty quick.
100%. That's a good segue, actually. Go ahead, but finish your thought. Then we'll go there in a second. Yeah. So,
but I think I'm still a little concerned with the way that they are winning. They are winning all these one-score games. I know there's a lot of one-score games in the league this year, like the most ever so far, but I don't think this is something that the Vikings want to continue to do, because eventually that's going to come back to bite them, I believe, in probably, maybe not this week, but against Buffalo. And who knows if it'll even be a one-score game in Buffalo, but yeah, that's just kind of my vibe right now. Let's try and win by more than 7-8 points in a game and kind of go from there.
It's funny that you bring that up, because that's been the narrative for Washington all year long. It's been a nip and tuck kind of game. I don't know if you caught our game last week. We actually were down, had to score at the last second to take the win last week. And it's kind of been that way the entire season. We kind of play with a very minimal margin of error. We, especially with Taylor Heineke as our quarterback, it's funny because he's elusive. He creates on his own. However, I feel like our offensive coordinator really isn't confident in his abilities, because they're constantly trying to run the ball and establish the run, which has been more of like a, like 35, 36, 37 carries a game, which is kind of the contrast to what like the modern NFL is. And I'm kind of concerned going into a Minnesota game, because I do want to talk about your offense in a minute, is that if we do fall behind, will we have to open up the playbook? Will we have to be able to catch up with you guys? It's going to be kind of a different perspective from what we're going to see. So I had a great question in the chat. Basically, Hawk, one of our listeners, basically said, how do you feel about the NFL trade deadline for 2022? Let's touch on that real quick. You guys, I feel like you guys had we had a selling of an issue. You had a buying. So we'll go with you. How do you feel about getting Hawkinson, Carson?
Yeah, I thought it was a big time move. If you look at one of the trade charts that are out there, kind of taking into consideration the value that the Vikings got, it looks like the Vikings won pretty handily in the deal. There's other trade charts maybe that aren't quite as friendly in that regard, but I think the fact that the Vikings pretty much just spent a couple of draft picks to get TJ Hawkinson, who was a top 10 overall pick a couple of years ago. And the fact that so far this season, he is first in yards per reception, first in yards in a game, and fifth in receiving yards among tight ends in the league. To add that to this offense that's already got Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, that is huge. Obviously, Irv Smith going down doesn't help, but he has not been as productive as we were hoping he would be.
Yeah, I'm surprised by him. I am surprised by him.
So to add TJ Hawkinson to this offense, I think is huge, and we didn't give up a boatload to get him.
Tony, double down on that? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think that on the news that Irv Smith is 8 to 10 weeks going. That's TJ Hawkinson. So yeah, I love the pick. Certainly excited about it. Let's roll.
There you go. Cool. And then from our perspective, we sold, we traded William Jackson away. Basically, he was one of our high acquisitions. We brought him in to be a shutdown corner. We got him from Cincinnati. He had one of the all-time sophomore campaigns for Cincinnati where he only allowed 30% of his throws against him. We gave him a pretty large contract. I think it was a 3-year, $40 million contract. But the problem is that we kind of acquired a square peg and tried to put him into a circle, and it was a round hole, right? We play primarily a zoned defense, and he's primarily a man cover corner. And, Jack Del Rio just couldn't find the synergy of basically putting him into our defense, and it just wasn't working out well. So ultimately, we traded him to the Pittsburgh Steelers for pennies. It's kind of crazy. We actually, I don't know if you guys caught the deal, but we basically got a 2025, I think it's a 6th-round pick or 5th, a late round pick, a day 3 pick in order to actually to exchange for him. But I think it was more of a salary dump because we're going to take a $9 million dead cap hit next season, but we will save $6 million. And one person that we'll talk about, or two people we'll talk about during this podcast is Cameron Curl, our strong safety number 31, and Deron Payne, our defensive tackle number 94. They're upcoming for potential contract extension. So I think it was kind of a salary dump move in order to basically pick them up. So we kind of talk about that there. All right. So before we get into more of the offense and the nuance, right? So, Minnesota 6-1, feeling pretty good, potentially, making some big moves. Kevin O'Connell, new coach. He basically was one of our guys. He's, it's funny as a Washington fan, every single week we get that one graphic where it's like Kevin O'Connell and it's like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. It's always like all these guys left our program to go to other programs. So
Kirk Cousins.
So, and I want to talk to you about him too. It's actually one of my next couple questions. It's my next question, actually. So, how's the Kevin O'Connell experience been perceived over Minnesota? Are you guys happy with him as a coach? Do you guys find him as an offensive genius? I have no idea. What's your perspective of him?
I think everybody loves him so far. Okay. I think the most outstanding part of him as a coach so far has been, at least between the X's and O's, has been his play calling in the red zone. He has been really elite, especially on Sunday. I don't know if you got to watch any of our games Sunday, but some of the play calls, the Johnny Munt wide open after they faked a jet sweep to, I think it was Jefferson or Jalen Reagor, because they ran a jet sweep for a touchdown with Jalen Reagor a few weeks ago, and then they set them up for that, and then they went for a touchdown, Johnny Munt wide open, which Johnny Munt usually probably should be wide open because most people don't pay attention to him because they don't expect him to catch the ball. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's been the most important part of his X's and O's play calls. I think the one thing we want to see, maybe, at least from my perspective, is to see him be more consistent with the play calls from drive to drive, because there are times when it seems like the Vikings offense just disappears. We saw that on Sunday for about a quarter or more, and it was also coincidentally the same time that they didn't throw the ball to Justin Jefferson. Surprising, their offense didn't do as well when they didn't get their best player involved. But I think that's something that they need to continue to work on. Hopefully Hawkinson adds to that and be able to bring more of that consistency. And I just think the vibe so much has changed since Mike Zimmer. And first of all, rest in peace, Adam Zimmer. That was tragic news this morning, man. That is tough.
It's been a rough day.
But yeah, Mike Zimmer, just a totally different personality than Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell just embraces the players on the team. He doesn't have this crusty old man type attitude. And he's a player's coach. He really is. And he's able to show that he can talk to these players with like not necessarily like yelling at them, but like saying, hey, I want you to do this. Like we've seen him with Kirk Cousins, like that throw that he made to Jefferson. That was a contested catch. Like that's probably not a throw that Kirk Cousins makes last year. And I think Kevin O'Connell makes Kirk, or at least challenges him to make those throws down the field more than he would in past years. And when Jefferson's down there, why not give him a shot to go get it?
Advantage, exactly right. And I think with Kirk Cousins, he's the kind of guy, we're familiar with him. We drafted him and worked with him for years. I think he's the kind of guy that like builds on relationships and builds with comfort, like being familiar with people. And I think having Kevin O'Connell in his corner, knowing that his coach believes in him, he's more willing to take a risk. So I definitely see the upside there. I guess another question, it's a silly question before we get to a bigger question. Greg Minuski was like a hot topic here in DC because he's our defensive coordinator. Is he making any noise, or is he like anyone relevant over Minnesota, or not really?
I mean, I know who he is. Wasn't he the coach for the Jaguars at one time?
I think he's your linebacker coach right now, isn't he? That's what I'm trying to say.
He is our linebacker coach right now. Is what you're saying? Oh, I don't even.
That's good. It's probably a good thing.
Know that, so
it's probably a good thing. Okay.
Probably a good thing. Okay.
Because he was our defensive coordinator for a long time. He kind of was like a topic of ire here. People didn't really like him that much. It's kind of funny that he's over on your staff now.
It is interesting though that both of our linebackers, Eric Kendricks and Jordan Hicks, according to PFF, going into the Cardinals game, were both bottom 5 in pass coverage. So maybe Greg Minuski has something to do with that. We'll just blame him, right?
Quite possibly. I agree. So I guess the next hot button topic is your boy, Kirk Cousins. So obviously we're super familiar with him coming over to Washington. I believe it's the first time he's coming back to DC. So it's gonna be very intriguing. There's gonna be the blackout game, a lot of high energy at Washington. I guess, talk to me from a fan perspective, from a media perspective. How do you feel about Kirk Cousins? Do you feel like are you highly happy that he's your quarterback? Are you confident in his abilities, or does he drive you? Does he frustrate you? That's kind of what we had when he left us. It's kind of a mixed bag in DC.
He is a 10 to 15 top quarterback of the league, like right in that mix. And maybe he's in the top 10 this year based on Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson not playing as well. Some of those other guys in the top 10 maybe not playing as well. He's definitely better than what we've had in Minnesota for a long time, basically since 2009, Brett Favre. And obviously there's a lot of other things with that, so we'll just move on from that.
Yes.
But yeah, I think Kirk Cousins has definitely been the most consistent quarterback the Vikings have had in a long time, so we do have to give him credit for that. But to your point, there are times when it just seems like between the ears, he does not know how to overcome weaknesses. He does not know how to perform on the primetime stage as much, or can't, or whatever. And he just is not able to appear in big games as much as we would like him to, and make the throws. Like I was saying, that throw to Jefferson, a throw that he would normally not make, he made that throw. So I do have hope that Kevin O'Connell is getting that extra out of him, but how sustainable is that, and will it be enough for the Vikings to overcome some of the deficiencies that they have? It's to be determined this year, but he's been good, but I still am not convinced that he's worth what the Vikings are paying him.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like a pretty, I think we had our thumb on the whole topic. I think we were very similar pages. Kirk Cousins was probably the best quarterback we had over the past 5-10 years. He definitely would crumble in the actual, primetime games and things like that. But it is the price tag was always the concern there. One question that's kind of always piqued my curiosity. In DC, Kirk Cousins wasn't really perceived and loved in the locker room. I felt like a lot of players would feel like he was kind of distant and kind of different. Is that also the case in Minnesota as well? Do you feel like I heard Stephon, obviously Stephon Diggs had a falling out with him before he went over to Buffalo. How is he perceived in the locker room? Is he well received?
Yeah, I think he's becoming more well received. I think the Vikings are embracing him,
Mm-hmm.
and part of the problem was that Mike Zimmer did not embrace him. He didn't meet with Kirk Cousins until the final year of Mike Zimmer being here in Minnesota. So that's 3 years where he didn't meet with his quarterback.
It's crazy.
So that's not good. So when
Mm-mm.
your coach doesn't embrace your quarterback, then and he is more of a family guy. He's not a big go out and party with the team type of guy.
Yeah, church
You
going guy.
know, yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. So he I think he is just a really good teammate in maybe helping out with game day and practice and that kind of thing. But maybe outside of that, he's maybe not as great of a teammate. But I know everybody. You not everybody is a Tom Brady other than this year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's something that I think we have seen the best year Kirk has had leadership wise too, where people are gravitating towards him. You saw the chains with Kirk Cousins that had the chains on after one of the wins. Like the team is just enjoying the winning, and the part of it is I think people would be not so gravitational towards him if they weren't winning. So I think that
That's
definitely
true. Winning
has a
definitely
big
breeds positivity. I
and
definitely
that
agree
you
with
could say
that.
that about a lot of people too. But yeah,
100%.
yep.
So real quickly, so I have a nice question from the chat, and then we'll start going back and forth between offenses and stuff. Our boy Hawk says, question: how does it feel to know that potentially the Vikings could have had the best wide receiver tandem in the league with Diggs and Jefferson? How do you feel about that? Because I don't really know much about the whole, the whole finances about that too. I'm sure there's more to it than just having them together. But how do you feel about that?
One other thing I was going to mention on the Diggs thing, you mentioned about him having a fallout with Kirk. I don't know if it was as much that, so much as it was the fallout with how the offense was run and how it was a run first offense. And
Mm-hmm.
Stephon Diggs, being a wide receiver, did not like that
Mm-hmm.
and just did not like the direction the Vikings offense was headed. So I think that was a big reason why he wanted out, because he
Gotcha.
knew that this was not a recipe for success. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, we know what he's doing over in Buffalo. But the only way that the Vikings could have had Diggs and Jefferson would have been if they would have traded up and kept Diggs, because that same pick that they got in the Diggs
Gotcha.
trade,
Gotcha.
they had to use that to go get Justin Jefferson. So they would have had to trade up, and not saying they couldn't have, but that
Unlikely
would have
with the
been
that would have been
a
awesome.
fantastic trio. Yeah,
That would have been
if they
sick.
could have kept him happy, but
That's
I
your
don't think
prime
that would have.
feeling too. Exactly
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Exactly. I
it would
I
have
got
been
you.
a lot of fun to watch, no doubt about that. But I do think it wouldn't have been as potential. The potential wouldn't have been as great with the offensive direction the Vikings were in, for sure. So
Gotcha. I got a chat from, I guess, a Minnesota fan right here. So Steve Lupton, thank you for reaching out. Tyler, I'm guessing it's mean Taylor Heineke. Taylor has given your offense a spark. Should Wentz be reinserted as the starter? So I think it's going to be interesting with these next couple of games. So Washington's won 3 in a row. We were dead in the water. We were 1-4 a couple weeks ago. We thought that those things were getting pretty dicey here in DC. We're talking hot seat Ron Rivera and things like that. Carson Wentz really struggled. He's definitely lacked his mobility. He had a fractured back last year with Philadelphia. He had a pedal foot injury with Indianapolis last year. He definitely has shown his age, believe it or not, at age 29. Excellent physical tools in regard to throwing the ball. He has a gun, a rocket. It was awesome to see that explosiveness that we haven't had that in years in Washington. But right now, we'll talk about this when we talk about your defense, is Washington's offensive line is susceptible. And I think our interior offensive line is especially susceptible with our guards. So what would happen is there'd be a lot of interior pressure where Carson Wentz would be pressured, and he was getting sacked at a high rate. I believe 9% of his dropbacks. Like, it was, when he was out, it was 21 sacks, the most in the league. So I think Taylor Heineke knows the offense better than Carson Wentz. I think he's more mobile than Carson Wentz. I think as a result, the Washington offense is being more efficient. He basically he doesn't have the high upside and the explosive, like flip the field kind of deep throws that Carson Wentz has. So I think we should kind of ride the hot hand, especially if we beat you. Or like, you guys and the Eagles offer a really great litmus test for us, because if we beat you guys, I do think you guys are a good team. I think that would be like, all right, we got to ride with Taylor for a couple more weeks because I think he's showing something. Um, Me being the objective fan, kind of looking at it from a GM perspective, we have we have Carson Wentz under contract for 2 more years after this year. We could cut him after this year and let him loose for no dead cap money. But I feel like you kind of have to give yourself some you have to give yourself like a honest assessment, self-assessment of the team, and potentially put him back in just to kind of see if it was his, or like, is he finally connecting with our team? Because he does have higher upside than Taylor Heineke. But if Taylor wins next week, then I think you definitely got to ride with him, because I think that's what he wins. 4 out of last 4 games, 3 out of last 3 games where he started. We're in the thick of the playoff run. But if he loses badly for the next 2 games, maybe put Wentz in. The final little nugget to that is that basically we have Sam Howell. We drafted him from North Carolina. He's on our bench. We do kind of want to see how he is over the last couple of weeks of the season. And then finally, there's a little contingent in Carson Wentz's contract. If he plays 70% of his snaps, we surrender a 2nd-round pick to the Indianapolis Colts. So right now, Carson Wentz is missing 4 games, minimum 4 games because of his injury. If he's out 6 games, we get to keep our 2nd-round pick. So that definitely factors into play. And great question, Steve. I appreciate that.
So Taylor Heineke, he was a Viking for a brief time. I don't know if you knew that. But,
I did not know that. I think I remember hearing that, but I don't like a game or 2, or what was it?
Yeah, so he was a part of the team in camp, and then I think he played some preseason games for us. I think he led us on a game-winning drive in a preseason game, and and maybe that was also Kyle Sloter or both. I don't remember, but we have an infatuation with quarterbacks that maybe aren't quite as good, but they find a way to perform at different times. They show flashes, and we always wanted to see what they'd be if they were given the full opportunity. But I did like Taylor Heineke as a backup at least, and I think the one thing compared to Carson Wentz with Taylor Heineke for you guys is the team loves Taylor Heineke. They love the competitor that he is, and they love playing with him, where I don't think that maybe is the case with Carson Wentz, at least as much. I know that was a problem in Philadelphia where the players maybe weren't gravitating towards him and maybe going away from him. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on that. Do you think Wentz has been that kind of problem for you guys as well?
So that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up. I think honestly, Carson Wentz has done everything the right way here in DC. I think he has been great with the media. He has had some high end games. The first game of the season had 4 touchdowns, like 258 yards, something crazy like that. Had really high end games, and he also had really low games where he'd have 99 yards passing and sacked 9 times a different game, right? So but when he had those low lows, he never turned on his team. He's like, I have to do better. I have to improve, and kind of like reflect in that regard. So I think Carson Wentz, from the media perspective and from the locker room perspective, people actually respected him. He is kind of a family man. He's kind of we have a very young team. I think we have the 7th youngest team in the NFL. He's 30 years old, has kids, which contrasts with like some of the younger people that want to go to the club and stuff like that. So I don't think he was like a popular let's go hang out with Carson Wentz. He was close with his offensive lineman. I don't know he had cookouts with them, but he wasn't.
You better be close with those guys, right?
Exactly. I got to take care of them, right? So I think he basically. I think he was he was respected. He was appreciated, but I don't think there wasn't there was no bad blood for there might not be best friends, but no bad blood. So we got that there. We have one of your Vikings guys saying shout out to TJ Hawkinson. You guys are pumped about that. That's a good one right there. So
yes, sir. Let's go Vikings 6-1. Appreciate you being in here, man.
Cool. And then basically Steve Lupton, great. I love having Steve's interaction, man. It's fantastic. He said, I live in Indianapolis. His rapport with the players and suspect leadership led to Colts decision moving on. I can see that. Irsay is definitely very volatile and he definitely can kind of steer things up as well. But from the Washington perspective, Carson Wentz, his biggest issue was the sacks that he gave up. It wasn't necessarily his personality or things like that. So let's talk game, man. Let's have some game talk. So
I suppose we better get into that, huh?
Let's do it, right? So Minnesota, man. So I'm gonna ask you a question about your offense. Feel free to ask me about mine. So Minnesota, I'm doing some research before the whole podcast. 7th in the league with pass attempts. Kirk Cousins' lowest amount of passes per game was 32. I think that was in week 1 or week 2. He had a high floor, like 46 pass attempts against the Eagles. How would you describe the Vikings offense? Because from a third-party perspective, it seems like it's a pass-first offense. Is that fair to say, or what are you thinking?
Yeah, it definitely is. I think the Vikings do want to run the ball successfully, though, because I do think that the running game helped set up the success of the passing game, especially on Sunday. And I actually thought the Vikings should have ran the ball more, and they ran the ball over 25 times. I thought they should have run the ball more just because of how successful it was. And Cousins threw the ball, I think, like 34, 36 times, something like that on Sunday. I thought that was too much for how well the Vikings were running the football in that game.
Yeah.
But the Vikings haven't run the ball consistently at times. There have been times when the running game has dipped off, but the last couple of games, they've done a good job of that. Dalvin Cook has kind of come back to life after kind of a slow start. Or maybe it was just the Vikings weren't using him right. I know he had some injury issues as well. That's probably the main reason, just getting healthy for him. But I think the weakness, I'll start with a weakness for the Vikings offense. I think that's got to be Ed Ingram, their right guard, rookie from LSU.
Yeah.
He has been really bad.
I saw that on PFF, like in the 60s or something, right? Like really, really low.
Yeah.
I saw that.
He has not been a good guard for the Vikings, and I still think we're hopeful that he will turn it around eventually. But I don't know if it's going to be this year. He might need another full offseason in this system and to kind of maybe build some strength and stuff. But I think that's a big area where you guys could maybe exploit this Vikings offensive line.
That's our strength too. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah. But overall, I think the Vikings offensive line has performed very well. Garrett Bradbury at times has struggled, but has been overall really, really well, really good, which is a welcoming surprise for Vikings fans. We were all ready to ship him to the curb here before the beginning of the season. So we'll definitely take what Garrett Bradbury's been giving us. But I think that's the biggest weakness. And maybe another weakness, which is not, it's just the consistent offense, like maybe the inconsistency is maybe a weakness. Maybe just the fact that the Vikings are still learning this playbook is maybe a little bit of a weakness. As they continue to grow in that, though, then that goes away, and we need more of Cook. I don't disagree at times. I don't disagree at times for sure. Last week especially, but I think it'll be interesting to see if the Vikings can find more consistency. Obviously, we know Jefferson, we know Osborne, we know Thielen, and now Hawkinson, adding him into that group of weapons. I think that is going to be tough for you guys to defend, especially now with William Jackson being gone. I don't know what the rest of your corner situation is. I know you mentioned Cameron Curl on the back end, but
we can talk about it. Yeah, we can in a second. Go ahead.
I think that's going to bode well for the Vikings if they can protect Kirk long enough. He's going to have time, and I think he's going to be able to sling the ball down the field pretty well. Maybe the running game will be a struggle if your defensive line is playing as well in the running game as well.
Our run defense is pretty solid. So I don't know if you want me to dive into my offense first or my defense. Yeah. Which one do you prefer? Does it make a difference?
You go for the offense.
All right, so we'll go for the offense. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. So with Taylor Heineke, our identity has changed, right? So with Carson Wentz, I think they wanted to be more of a pass-first offense where they wanted to kind of flip the field. It was funny because Terry McLaurin obviously is our wide receiver 1, but he kind of held out and he was more like in contract negotiations during training camp. So Carson Wentz built chemistry with Jahan Dotson, which was our slot wide receiver from Penn State, a first-round pick, and Curtis Samuel. So the first couple of weeks of the season, Curtis Samuel has been featured heavily. Jahan Dotson had 4 touchdowns in like 4 games, something pretty extreme like that. And what ended up happening was Terry McLaurin was not being fed the ball, which was, kind of eye-opening because we signed a $70 million contract. He's our captain, so on and so forth, right? High sack rate. Like I said before, 9% of his dropbacks was sacks, 21 sacks over the first 5 games. It was pretty ugly for Carson. So going down, that was an issue, right? And Carson even admitted that, like, there was different verbiage from his offenses to coming over here to DC. Like, we had like a number system, they had like a naming system. There was definitely some sort of like a learning curve here. Taylor Heineke has been on our team for about 2.5 years now. Very familiar with the offense. He comes in, he brings a mobile factor to the game. He has a limited arm strength, so when you guys will watch the game, he's like Washington will kind of protect that, right? So our offense will be we want to run the ball. We want to kind of control the clock, and then we want to basically hit like quick rhythm throws. It might be like a slant, a screen, a hitch, something like that to kind of move the ball, like West Coast offense methods, just to kind of get down the field because like testing the deep ball is not necessarily a strength of Taylor Heineke. On the flip side, though, the usage of Terry McLaurin has gone through the roof. Like Terry McLaurin has been thriving the past 2 games. I think he had like 75 yards this week, and then last week, and then 2 weeks ago had over 100 yards and a touchdown. So like Terry McLaurin's offense is definitely going up, and I think Terry McLaurin thrives with the contested ball. So I think Terry McLaurin will try to feed the ball that way. One thing Minnesota fans should be looking for from our offensive line is not great at all, especially our interior. We have Trey Turner from the former Carolina Panther at the right guard position, Andrew Norwell, former Carolina Panther, left guard. Ron Rivera's bringing everybody over, and we have our third center, Tyler Lawson, and as a third center because we lost Chase Gruyere and Wes Schweitzer early in the year, so we're in our third center now. Tyler Lawson has brought stability because he started 8 games last year because of Wes Schweitzer being out. Sorry, because of Chase Gruyere being out. But our offensive guards have not been great. We kind of have to hide them and protect them. So Taylor actually brings a good component to the offense because he's mobile. He'll actually run like waggles and he'll do play actions and things like that to kind of keep the offense going. So I think what you'll see is we'll try to run the ball with Brian Robinson. We'll try to throw screens and kind of like, get Antonio Gibson on the edge. He's more of like a slashing type of running back. And then, Curtis Samuel, he's our Swiss Army knife. He'll actually run from the backfield with the screens to him. And then Terry McLaurin will be our wide receiver 1. To be honest, our offense has kind of been underwhelming the past 2 weeks. But, believe it or not, come crunch time, that's Taylor Heineke's time. That's where he kind of comes back and he wins. He's done that for 2 weeks in a row. So, Taylor Heineke has kind of been like a cult hero for it's kind of funny. You said during the preseason he led a comeback victory during the preseason. Like that's who he is. He comes back from behind. So if the game is close, I wouldn't count him out. But he does have a propensity to turn the ball over. He had an interception both games so far. He had 15 interceptions in 15 games last year and 7 fumbles. So he's apt to basically turn the ball over. So it's definitely something to keep in mind over there. So that's Washington's offense. Run the ball and protect the ball with Taylor Heineke.
It's Taylor time.
It's Taylor time. Exactly. So we got somebody saying it's time. We got to protect Kirk, please. So that's interesting. So let me start this one. We can kind of pivot to defense right now, and we'll kind of talk about that, and we'll touch on your defense as well. That's interesting that you mentioned the interior offensive line as a concern because I think Washington's interior defensive line is our strength, and that's going to be definitely something to see. Jonathan Allen, number 93, was a Pro Bowler last year. I believe he had 8 or 9 sacks from the interior. Deron Payne was his Alabama running mate. He's another awesome. He's more of he came out as a run stopper, but now he's actually becoming more of a pass rusher. So that duo in the interior has stopped the run. So that's something that's intriguing to me because we haven't had a really big. We played Jonathan Taylor last week, shut him down. We've shut down the Eagles' run offense. We've been shutting down the running game. Aaron Jones couldn't do anything against us either. So Dalvin Cook will be a pretty interesting test for us. So our run game has been pretty good. Jonathan Allen he's always going to do something. I'm telling you right now, he'll generate pressure. He'll have tackles for loss, maybe a sack against Kirk. He's gonna pop on the screen this week. And Montez Sweat is the 7th rated PFF defensive end, where he basically has 32 hurries this year, QB pressures this year, but he only has 3 sacks. He's always almost there, but never can seal the deal. So I think our defensive line will cause some chaos. Our cornerbacks are solid. Kendall Fuller, we'll see how things play out. We have Kendall Fuller, who's like a veteran, but he's more of like a CB2 type of guy. We have Benjamin St-Juste, who's like a second-year guy, but he's more of a lengthy kind of person, like a 6'3", 220-pound corner. So, he does good against, A.J. Brown type. So, I don't really know if he'll do well against a Justin Jefferson type. We'll see how that goes. But we have him, and we have Rashad Wildgoose as our slot, who's kind of like a off-the-street, corner, but, he fits better than William Jackson because he plays a more of a sound zone off defense. So, that'll be interesting. So I think our defense honestly has been pretty solid. It's like 13th in the league in regard to actual yards, 15th in points per game. I think they will kind of hold some resistance, but we haven't faced a caliber of your offense in a little while. Like I do think of your offense in high regard. I do think Justin Jefferson's exceptional and Dalvin Cook's pretty good too. So this is a true test for us, and I am kind of curious how that goes. And then to kind of bring it on home, our safeties, like Cameron Curl, number 31, he's awesome. Like he's kind of an under the radar kind of dark horse. Like people don't know him nationally yet. He's a great player. And then Jamin Davis, our first round pick, who was like deemed a bust last year, is actually kind of like coming into his own. So it's kind of fun to see that. So I think our defense has been overperforming in the past couple of weeks. I hope it continues. That's going to be interesting to see. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think that's interesting that you mentioned that. Back to our offense here briefly. I think the fact that you guys have been able to stop the run could be a concern for the Vikings, because I do think the Vikings offense thrives when they are able to get play action going.
Mhm.
And if the Vikings don't run effectively, that play action is probably going to go away. And that's something that Kirk does really well, is play action passes. And so if the running game doesn't go well, play action struggles, that could be a warning sign for the Vikings offense. But I do think that if the Vikings offensive line can create some holes, or maybe the Vikings decide to run a little bit more outside the tackle box and go away from that interior of the Commanders, I think that'll help. But defensively speaking, about the Vikings, they it seems like they're getting better. I say that apprehensively, just because they've given up a lot of yards this season, but the thing that has been nice to see about this Vikings defense is that they have been able to get turnovers at key points of the game. Like we saw a couple of interceptions from Kyler Murray this past week. They got a muffed punt on special teams, so that's another area of the game. But they got a couple of different sacks on Kyler Murray throughout the game, including two to end the game, which was fantastic. So I think the rise of Zadarius Smith, as I saw, let's go Vikings 6-1.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's
8.5 sacks. He has been fantastic. One of the great free agent signings that the Vikings have had, maybe ever, just based on the value of his contract and how well he's performed.
Is it his first year here in Minnesota? Like I was doing some research for the show. 8.5 sacks, 13 tackles for loss in freaking 7 games. It's ridiculous. That's awesome, man. So that's really cool.
And he's been not only the sacks, but he's also been getting pretty high grades with pressures as well.
Cool.
So the fact that you have him, I think he's maybe taken away a little bit from Danielle Hunter, who's our other defensive end. Yeah, he's been underperforming statistic wise, but I think he's been getting pressure and he's been pretty solid in the run game. So I think that's something that you guys could maybe watch out for. Maybe it'll be his breakout game. Who knows? And maybe they'll focus on Zadarius, and Danielle will be free to do a little bit more. But it'll be interesting to see that. I think that your short passing game could be effective against the Vikings, because there has been times when the Vikings do not play press coverage, and they give plenty of space to these receivers. And if you're throwing these short passes, it might open up your offense. So that'll be something to keep an eye on.
And that'll be interesting, because that's how Washington's their bread and butter. We have like yards after catch type of wide receivers. We have Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson. Hopefully Jahan Dotson comes back. He's had a hamstring issue for the past couple of weeks. He was supposed to come back maybe 2 weeks ago and kind of retweaked it during training or pregame. I don't know if he's going to come back or not, but he was awesome. He was an instant rookie impact player. So if he's on the field and you guys are kind of like, that press coverage is kind of an issue for you guys, that would be an issue, because I feel like that is something that we force feed often. I think also that works for the strengths of Taylor Heineke, because they're afraid to push the ball downfield. They'll distribute it. So, kind of short to kind of protect that, which will be interesting, because I'm kind of curious of like how the Vikings would play that. Like, are you guys more of an aggressive defense? Because like if I was the Vikings, what I would do is I would force Taylor Heineke to throw over us. Like I would play press man coverage and I would blitz and I'd be like, I'm going to still out for the run and throw over the top of us. Like, do you guys have the capability of doing that? Like, is Patrick Peterson still pretty solid? Like, what's going on with all that?
Patrick Peterson's been really pretty good. I mean, the
Okay.
fact that he's 32 years old and he's playing the level that he's playing, I don't think we can ask too much more from him.
Yeah.
He's been graded pretty highly, I think, too. He had a couple of pass deflections last week that were huge. I think he's been playing really well. Cam Dantzler has flashed at times. He's been really good in the run game, and he made that strip against the Bears to end that game. So he's got a knack to go get the ball. It's just a matter of sometimes he gets beat. He did get beat quite a few times against Hopkins, but who doesn't get beat against
Hopkins
Duke
is
Hopkins,
crazy.
right?
He had an awesome catch that game too. I saw that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I know Chandon Sullivan was covering him once too, and I was just like, "What are we doing here?" But that it happens. But I think Chandon Sullivan, he going into last week, he was rated one of the worst cover corners in our slot. So if Dotson is back this week, I am very concerned about that. I do think Harrison Smith is having a down year, but he's made some plays with some interceptions. And I think he still has the instincts of a really good NFL safety. Cam Bynum has been up and down as well this season, had an interception last week. But I think that's going to be the key for the Vikings. Apply pressure and get more turnovers against you guys, because I think that's really the way that they have been able to stop offenses at times this season. Offenses like Teddy Bridgewater a few weeks ago threw for over 300 yards with the Dolphins when Tua was out. And then we saw Kyler Murray throw for over 300 yards. We've seen a lot of these quarterbacks throw pretty effectively against this Vikings pass defense, which I believe is bottom 5 in the league. So if they can find a way to get their passing attack rolling, then I'd be worried about that. The running defense has actually been pretty good. I think I saw something according to PFF that they're rated as the number 1 run defense, which kind of was like a little bit of a shocker to me. But the run defense
is interesting, right? Yeah, it's always catches you off guard. But it's good. It's good to know. That's cool. Interesting.
Yeah, and their run defense has improved from last year, because it was one of the worst run defenses, I believe, a year ago. And then when you can run against somebody, then the passing becomes all that much easier. So I think they are going to probably have to pass to set up the run, though, against the Vikings.
Interesting. That's gonna be out of the comfortability level of what we've been doing. It's gonna be different from our games previously. So I think Washington's gonna be excited to see that. Like last week, Washington fans, what I'm saying here, because last week when we played in the Colts, they were so conservative. It was like almost like guaranteed run first and second, and potentially they'll hitch a very predictable pass on third down. The Colts actually have a surprisingly good defense. They were 8th in the league, so I think Washington kind of played in that hands. And we also played Sam Ehlinger, who was a backup for the Colts. I think they were like, you know what, as long as we keep the game close, we should be good. So they might open the game up and try to pass the ball, but at the same time, I feel like the way it's going to work is that Washington's going to try to be conservative. They're going to try to run the ball. They're going to try to get up and kind of control the clock because they want to keep your offense off the field. I think that's going to be the name of the game there. If there is a susceptible part of your defense, I guess you would say the defensive line is pretty good. You were saying maybe the linebackers and maybe pass coverage there. What are you thinking?
Yep. Pass coverage from the linebackers has been suspect. I think they were better last week. I'm still worried about the sustainability of that. Yep. And then I'm also concerned with Chandon Sullivan, our slot corners. So kind of the middle of the field, I think, even though I know Hopkins was beating us all over the place because he's Nuke Hopkins. But I think the middle of the field is maybe my biggest concern, but also those short passes, like I said. I think the Vikings have had trouble with those this season just because they play so off coverage that it's hard for the corners to just come up and make plays. And when you get athletes like a Terry McLaurin or a Jahan Dotson in space, they're probably going to be a good chance that they make you miss. So that concerns me quite a bit. But I do think that the Vikings can limit that. And, if Jahan Dotson, wants to just wait one more week, that's fine by me. But it would be kind of cool to see him play just because competition wise, you'd like to see your best players
best
out
of the
there for
best,
sure.
100%, and more
Yep.
entertaining, right? And let's go Vikings 6-1. You're exactly right. So just to give you guys some narrative, some context for the Minnesota fans, it was a nip and tuck game. It was a very dry game. Like both Washington's offense and Indianapolis could not generate any offense throughout most of the game. What ended up happening was Washington was up most of the game because we would run the ball and just kind of slowly matriculate down the field. What ended up happening was Taylor Heineke threw a real bad interception, like real bad in the red zone. The Indianapolis got up and scored, and we were down double digits, I believe 10 points with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That's when the offense started to open up. We went away from our, conservative game scripts, are throwing the ball around. Taylor Heineke drives the length of the field. We get a field goal. They go 3 and out for the Colts. We get the ball back, and then what ended up happening is Taylor Heineke once again got blitz up the middle. He rolled out. He threw a big long pass down to Terry McLaurin, caught on the 1 yard line. He, basically flipped the game right there. QB sneak and Taylor Heineke scores. And that's how we win the game. So it was very, very close. I think I don't know if you guys have. I know Zadarius Smith is kind of like a stout, more of like a defensive end kind of edge rusher as opposed to like an outside linebacker. But Heineke can like scramble and kind of get out of the pocket. So that might be something that Washington will try to do. So gotcha there. Carson, any questions for me in regard to Washington?
Yeah, I think I'm interested to hear about your linebacker core. I know you said your defensive line is good, and you maybe already talked about your linebackers a little bit, but your linebackers, how are they so far this year?
So they're like a big area of controversy in DC, right? We have Jamin Davis and we have Cole Holcomb. It's funny, Washington only has truly 2 starting linebackers. We run a 5-2, or we kind of run like that Buffalo nickel. I don't know if you guys have heard that jargon in Minnesota before. Buffalo nickel basically means like we take a nickel cornerback and we put a safety there instead. So we have a 3 safety set, and we kind of use our third, that nickel safety as like a hybrid linebacker. So we kind of deploy. That's probably the best 11 people on defense because we don't have a third linebacker. So the way it would work was Cam Curl, Derek Forrest, and Bobby McKinnon are 3 safeties will play together. Number 31, Cam Curl, like I'm saying, has really thrived. He's actually is a really good box safety. But last week, Cole Holcomb, number 55, our best linebacker, had a concussion, was out last game. So what ended up happening was he basically did not play. That blue dot went to Cam Curl, which are strong safeties. He was the one calling the defensive play calling. What he played more of like a free safety, more of like a deep safety, and kind of was like calling the defense from the back. But he's good enough to do that. Like Cam Curl was actually pretty solid. So that's going to be interesting because Jamin Davis, number 52, our first round pick, he is kind of suspect in coverage. So you guys can definitely take advantage of that. But he is a fast guy. He's like a height, weight, speed guy. I don't feel like you guys are familiar with the GRASS score, like relative athletic score, by Matt, Matt Baum or whatever. He runs like a 4.3 40, 6'2". He's legit athlete. So he can keep up with people, but it's not a strength of his. But that is kind of like our defensive line solid. Our defensive line's above average. Our linebackers are below average, and our cornerbacks are below average. But then, I don't know. You guys can pass against us, but at the same time, our defense has been playing more solid recently. So we'll see there. But yeah, like what I would do if I was a Minnesota fan, I'd kind of watch the injury report, kind of cross your fingers and hope Cole Holcomb is out one more week because he leads our team in tackles. He is our primary Mike linebacker. So that would be a big loss for us. But we made it work last week, but the Colts are a different animal than Minnesota. So we'll see there.
What are your thoughts on Riverboat Ron?
Riverboat Ron, man. So he's a hot topic over in DC. He is for me personally, I find him as like a culture changer. Like Washington had a very messy, culture and basically a lot of things going on and, coaches that are basically were unprofessional and things like that. I think Ron Rivera brings a high floor. I think he brings like credibility, and I think he brings respect to the organization. But I don't think he is innovative and like on the sharp, like the razor's edge of basically being like innovative and like being that future type of like Sean McVay type of coach, right? He's kind of more of like a old school, I'm going to run the ball kind of coach kind of guy. He is a great leader of men. Like our team could have easily fell apart at 1-4. Like what you guys will see with Washington is we're kind of a feisty team. Like you guys probably have more talent on offense and you guys might be able to like, maybe score a lot on us or what. We'll see what happens. But I think Washington will be like, we're not going to lose. Like we're not going to turn tail and run. We're going to keep fighting regardless of what the score is going to be, and that's a reflection of Ron Rivera. The criticism of him, because I can tell you're a football fan, is basically he has our GM role here in DC. People will criticize his personnel decisions because he's done a lot of things where like he'll pick players where like, James Bradbury, for instance, right? Like was a Carolina Panther. We wanted him here in DC. He passed on him, right, and let him go over to Philadelphia, and he's thriving in Philadelphia. But like a lot of our staff and a lot of our former players on their team, all our acquisitions are all former Panthers. And like, I understand familiarity, and I understand like, bringing continuity, but at the same time, the Panthers aren't like a dominant program. You want to keep bringing people over there. And then Andrew Norwell and Trey Turner are like our starting guards. They're like 30 and 31. We let Brendan Sheriff walk to go to Jacksonville. We let Eric Flowers. Eric Flowers is actually a free agent, believe it or not. So he was actually our starting guard last year. But I think he kind of overestimated their quality. He underestimated their quality because let them walk for essentially nothing. And basically our guards are basically hit because of that. And then to compound on that, William Jackson, an acquisition that he put into effect, we basically just got rid of him because he was a bad addition to our team. So I think Ron, the GM, is getting a D-E grade. Ron, the coach, is getting a B- grade. That's kind of where we're seeing right now.
All right. That's interesting. I think the Panthers maybe aren't the team to steal offensive linemen from.
Not at all.
They've struggled with their offensive line over the last several years. So I think maybe you guys will have to change that philosophy moving forward. But it's interesting. I do agree with you. I think Ron Rivera is, first of all, great dude. I think he's a great dude from what I know. And I think the players fight for him. I think you're 100% right. And that is something that's scary going into this game, because kind of like the Cardinals, now not saying that Cliff Kingsbury is a coach that people fight for, but I think they were fighting continuously, partly because they knew the playoffs, that this would be a potential big game for them to win if they could win this game. But I think the Commanders, the same thing. Like, they're still in this thing. They're still in the race because the NFC has been absolutely garbage, really. I mean, in terms of the middle part of the conference, the top end kind of pretty good, but I think there's still some susceptibility there. Maybe not so much with Philadelphia, but maybe with the Vikings, maybe with some of the other teams, San Francisco, whatever. But I think that this conference is pretty open, and I think Washington somehow could find themselves right in here. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on that.
An added component, which would be kind of interesting, right? You said Mike Zimmer passed away, or sorry, is it Mike Zimmer who passed away?
His son Adam Zimmer passed away, only 38 years old this morning.
Yeah. So yeah, rest in peace for him. So Adam Zimmer passed away for him. So there's definitely going to be some emotion potentially in Minnesota. Ron Rivera's mom passed away today as well. So basically,
really?
So there's definitely there's going to be an emotional investment. So if I think the team really does connect with Ron Rivera. I think, in 2020 he had cancer and the team rallied around him. He was going through chemotherapy, going through chemo while leading the team. So I feel like they do believe in him, and the fact that his mom passed away, and they probably want to win this game for him. It's going to be an emotional game at home, like a blackout game. So it's going to be interesting. I'm actually going to go to the game, which will be a lot of fun. So it's going to be interesting. I'm really excited about it, and we'll see. I mean, it's all going to come down to, in my opinion, it's going to be your offense and how can they score on our defense. We'll kind of see how that goes. It's kind of like our keys to the game. So let's kind of talk about that and kind of bring, about an hour into the show. So we kind of bring some closure pretty soon. What do you think, what's your confidence level going into the game? What's the key to the game in your opinion?
So I'd say my confidence level, if I'm going on a 1 to 10 scale, I'd say I'm probably an 8.
Okay.
I think that's a pretty realistic scale. I think just some of the things I've already mentioned would put it down from a 10 to an 8. But I think an 8 is. I mean, not that we couldn't lose this game because it's the NFL. We all know how the NFL works. We saw Cleveland do what they did to the Bengals. We saw the other week what Chicago did to the Patriots. So it's the NFL. Anything can happen. We know that all too well. But I feel like I'm pretty confident in how the Vikings have been playing, and I'm guessing. Maybe do we want to hold the score predictions, or you want me to give my Score prediction.
Talk about it first. We'll go back and forth then. Score
Okay.
prediction. We'll end on that.
All right.
What's up, Dennis? What's going on, bud?
But yeah, I think the Vikings defense will be able to make enough plays, maybe force Taylor Heineke to throw a couple of bad throws, and then the Vikings offense does enough to win this game. But we'll get into the score predictions here in a minute. But I'm pretty confident, but still there's that little part of me as a Minnesota sports fan that's like, okay, this still could be a loss.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. Yeah, I don't want to be arrogant or make any score predictions or any I mean, I'll do it if that's what you want to do at the end of the show. I don't know how I feel about the whole competition yet, because I do think that you guys have a talented offense. I think Dalvin Cook is one of the best running backs in the league. I think Justin Jefferson is the number 2 wide receiver in the league. I want to give it to Cooper Kupp. Everyone says Justin Jefferson is better than Cooper Kupp. I love Cooper Kupp. I think he's a supreme wide receiver. I love him there. I think your offense is very, very strong. I feel like our defense could probably be better than your defense. I'm not trying to be critical or anything. Like, I think they're on the same, about the same level. Maybe ours a little bit sharper. Your offense is sharper. I think it's going to come down to turnovers. And it's funny because when you come out of Kirk Cousins or Taylor Heineke, you guys have a better quarterback, and quarterbacks typically tip the scale when it comes to the game. So I think you guys probably are the favorites. And I know, Vegas determined you guys as a 3-point favorite, which is pretty significant considering, the whole, we're typically a home team gets a -3 favorite. So you guys are supposed to win by -6, which is pretty legit, You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But basically, so that's interesting. So it's interesting that you guys are going that route. I would say that Minnesota is probably favored to win that game, but I wouldn't be surprised if Washington is kind of pesky and kind of hanging around for a while. The only thing that I can kind of say about Washington is that Washington kind of plays like a razor's edge, kind of like the way that their playing style is basically like, we're going to run the ball. We're going to try to keep it away from you and hopefully just play with the lead. And basically, if we get behind, that's where I become worried. So I'm hoping that we have a Kirk Cousins meltdown game. That'd be very fun. I'll be awesome to see live, where it's like throwing multiple picks and things like that. So I'm kind of hoping for that. But we'll see.
It's supposed to be against Buffalo, not you guys.
I know. I mean, it's definitely happening against Buffalo. I'm telling you that right now. But hopefully, happening against us too. That'd be awesome. Let's see. So what's going on in the chat? Vikings better not to keep the game close and give Taylor a shot to win. I agree
with that.
I agree with that. Right there. I agree, man.
Yeah.
Keeping Taylor in the mix is not good for Minnesota. He'll come back, man. So
he has got that competitive edge, competitive spirit, man. He will go and win the game. We saw it against Green Bay. Like, the Packers kept letting him hang around even after that pick 6 or 2 pick 6s, whatever it was, against the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
They kept letting him hang around, and all of a sudden the Commanders took command. As I think that's one of your sayings now.
One of our hashtags, take command.
Yeah, take command. Right. So I think that's a concern for the Vikings. We've let teams hang around. I don't know if you've paid attention to our last 5 games, but all of them determined by 1 score. And it's because we've let teams hang around. There's been multiple opportunities in those games where the Vikings should have taken the reins and said, this is ours. We're going to win this thing handily and be done with it. But no, they are inconsistent offensively. The defense starts to give up yards, and then all of a sudden we're in a 1-score game, and now you got to go win the game, or you got to hold the team at the end, which the Vikings did on Sunday. But we've also seen Kirk Cousins come up with some clutch fourth quarter comebacks where the Vikings see him take the team down the field and lead them to a field goal or a touchdown drive. So we've seen that a few times this year, which is maybe a little uncharacteristic of Kirk, but I'd be interested to see if he can do that against Buffalo in a couple weeks. And of course, hopefully we don't even have to be in that situation against you guys, but we'll see.
We'll see. All right, so if we're going prediction time to kind of bring it on home, it's funny, man. So my mind says that Minnesota should basically they should win this game. But for some reason or another, I got a feeling. I think the way it's going to play out, the legend of Taylor Heineke is going to continue. I kind of see a very ugly game, like a 22-19 kind of game, something like that. And I think Washington's going to pull it out. Because this is just from my heart. This is not coming from my mind at all. I think what's going to happen is Washington's going to beat Minnesota and then get smacked by the Eagles the following week. I kind of see I think that's where we're going to go. But I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota pulled it out. But I just feel like Minnesota is, they're a good team. but I don't know if like there's a 6-1 true reflection of a 6-1 team. If that makes any sense. I'm not trying to be critical of that, but like you guys beat the Packers, Saints, like you guys lost to the Eagles.
Yeah, we beat the Saints, Bears, Lions, and last week the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals was probably our biggest statement win. We beat the Dolphins without Tua, so how big of a deal is that? I mean, a win's a win, obviously, as we've been coining over the last 5 weeks. But it is going to be interesting to see the sustainability. I totally agree with you. Like, is this sustainable to keep winning these one-score games? I'm not convinced.
Shout out to Marketing Pro. It's a true NFL TV show, apparently. So Rams #1. Congratulations on that. I guess the whole Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, whatever. It's all there. So good for you guys. I appreciate that. That's awesome. And then we'll bring it on home, man. So Carson, what are you thinking? I mean, the Vikings, they're favored to win. I mean, I know you're feeling confident. What do you think the score is going to be?
I'm going to say 27-21 Vikings.
Okay.
I think it's just going to be another one-score game, and I'm going to be sitting there like, oh boy, here we go. We're letting the Commanders hang around. But I think it's going to come down to the Vikings defense having to make a play again when Taylor Heineke's driving down the field, and they're going to have a chance to go score and kick the extra point to win the game, because Greg Joseph is probably going to miss another kick because he's been doing that the last few weeks.
It sounds like our teams are very similar, by the way. Our kicker misses kicks too, so keep that in mind. It's interesting. That's hilarious.
Or we'll just tie it 27-27, go into overtime like Panthers Falcons did.
It's gonna be it's gonna be a fun game. I'm gonna be there in person. For those of you that are listening that are Vikings fans that aren't necessarily a follower, give me a follow on YouTube. I have YouTube Shorts. I'll be there recording live from the game. It'll be really awesome. I'm excited about it. I think it's gonna be a good game. I hope Washington can keep up with it. I think it's truly gonna come down to which defense actually comes to play, right? Who has that one turnover that's very critical, and it could go either way. Like I think, I watched Kirk Cousins for you. I watched every single Redskins Commanders game since I was, a little baby. I know Kirk Cousins can do turnovers which are backbreaking, but I also know that Taylor Heineke can do that too. Like a pick six can definitely devastate the game. It's gonna be like, who's gonna do that in this game, which I'll see, but we'll see how it goes. Let me take a look at the chat. All right, so he has to go by. So do we. We actually have to take off in a second.
Appreciate it. Let's go Vikings 6-1. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate you, bro. Thank you for listening, man. So, Carson, before we get off, man, unless you have any other questions, are you good?
I was gonna ask you. So yeah. I know Kirk Cousins is obviously a kind of what you see is what you get type of guy. I know he's kind of been good and but not great. What is your overall perception of him? In terms of, would you rather have him right now in Washington compared to what you've had and what you've had over the last several years? Would you have just kept him?
I would say I'm the outlier of the community, to be honest with you. I'm a big Commanders person. I tweet all day long. I would say the pulse of the fan base is that they're angry with Kirk Cousins. They felt like they feel kind of slighted with the fact that he would he got franchise tag for 2 years. He wouldn't take the extension and all that, so they feel like he left us and felt he kind of like he was fake. That's kind of the mentality that the Redskins Commanders community feels. Me personally, I'm an objective football guy and I love football. I would have paid Kirk Cousins. I think Kirk Cousins is actually a pretty solid quarterback. I think if he was our quarterback, Washington would have had a higher floor for consistent years. I think the record that you guys have and that being like 7, 8, 9, 10 win kind of team, that would have been us with Kirk Cousins over the past couple of years. The catch is, people kind of view Washington very lowly because of all the negative press. If you look at our records, we are about a 7, 8 win team every single year. Like we are a middle of the pack kind of team. So it's like, it would have been interesting to have Kirk Cousins. He is an albatross in the salary cap. You have to I don't know if you feel that way, but he does affect the way that things are actually going. Like you're more on the pulse with this. Justin Jefferson, has his contract even hit yet, or is he still on his rookie contract?
He's still on his rookie deal. So
that's gonna be crazy when that happens, right?
Yeah. That's so I think his deal would start taking effect the year after Kirk's extension ends currently. Okay. If they don't extend him again, which I'm hopeful they don't, just because I don't know how you're going to be able to put a team together if you have to pay Jefferson and Cousins top dollar, like where's the rest of the team gonna get built from? That's my biggest concern. But I think that has definitely been my biggest gripe with him. Like if he was making like $10 million less than what he's making, like I'd be
Love him.
okay. I'd be
love him.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we could add another corner or another defensive piece, maybe two for the same amount that $10 million, whatever, I think I'd like him a lot more because I do think he's worth at least, $20-25 million. But when you start getting into the 30s with Kirk Cousins, I'm like, eh. And I'm kind of the same way about Dak, which is a whole nother conversation we won't get into. But I think he's overpaid too. But anyways.
I think Cousins is the ultimate tease. He's a fun player. He'll have some games where he'll feel like, he averages 2 touches a game. He'll end the season with 30 touchdowns, like 10 picks. He has a pretty good ratio. You want to support him, but at the same time, that those stats are more like efficiency stats as opposed to like game-changing stats. That's a frustrating thing about Kirk Cousins. So, I would have been happy to have that high floor. I would have been happy. He's going to be somebody that you guys will reflect on 10 years from now. Like, oh, he's a good quarterback that we had. But I don't know if he's ever going to take you to that next level where he's going to win the Super Bowl. And it's like, if that's what we're playing
that's
for,
where I'm concerned.
That's what you're playing for. That's kind of the hard part there. So
right.
I can see it.
So
cool.
Well, I'll let you wrap up. I just wanted to ask that get a little more clarity on the old Kirk situation.
No problem. And I love the whole back and forth this whole time. We had a good chemistry. So Carson, to wrap it all up, where can they find you on socials? Basically, what products are you working on? So just let it all go down.
Yeah. So we're at SKOL Purple Pod, SKOL. And you know how to spell purple and pod, I'm guessing. But that is on Twitter, social media, on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. So all of those platforms. And then we're on YouTube, SKOL Purple Podcast. We are going to hopefully have a video this week. I'm going to try and talk with Lions Fan Reports, a guy that I've done some episodes with. Going to try and talk to him about the Hockenson deal from their perspective, and we can maybe kind of talk a little bit more in detail with that, but looking forward to that. And we have Tony, my producer / social media guy, does all kinds of help with the show. He is going to have his show drop later this week, SKOL with Staggy. So make sure to tune in for all those, and I'm sure he'll be talking about the Commanders game as well. So
sounds good. And everybody, I'm George Carmi from FullPressCoverage.com. I write for Full Press Coverage for the Commanders. I also host the Full Press Commanders podcast on YouTube, so definitely give me a follow. I'm trying to grow that channel out. You guys can follow me at GCarmi21. That's my personal handle, or FBC_Commanders. I love talking football. I love building the football community, so I definitely want to have a little Minnesota niche, so definitely follow me, and I'll definitely follow you guys as well. That'd be awesome. And let's have a good game, man. So let's enjoy our Sunday. Thank you for listening, and have a great evening. Peace out, everyone.
SKOL.
SKOL. And let's go, baby. Peace out, guys.